Daimon Blades is a brutally fast hack-and-slash roguelite set in the wonderfully weird universe of I Divine Cybermancy. And you know you're in for a wild ride when the game opens up with a thesaurus explaining what the hell the name actually means, and then immediately dumps you into actual hell to fend off hordes of demons. Much like it is very janky and cryptic, but also endlessly fascinating. What is this place? Who made it? And who decided to glaze their entire bone floor in gold? Even for demons, that is just tacky. Hey folks, I'm Ash, and let me show you what Daimon Blades has to offer, where it excels, and also where it stumbles. Daimon Blades is all about speed and spectacle. You and your enemies zip through the levels at ridiculous speeds. Charge attacks detonate the whole screen, and it is often hard to even see what's happening thanks to all of the limbs flying around. Needless to say, carving through hordes of demons with a massive greatsword is immensely satisfying, especially since these aren't ordinary weapons. They're the titular Daimon Blades, each with its own attack patterns, magical abilities like turning enemies into flowers, and yeah, you did hear that right, and a variety of perks you can upgrade between runs. They're distinct enough to feel different, yet similar enough that swapping between them doesn't make you stumble. And that's very important because the enemies here don't even give you a second to breathe. Basic fodder will just leap at you, while the stronger ones will teleport behind you, try to pin you down, or just scuttle across the ceiling to strike you from weird angles. None of them are dangerous alone, but once 20 of them start circling you, it becomes really hard to stay in control. At least until you learn the magical combo. Dodge around, charge up a heavy attack, dive in to bisect everything in your path, and then repeat. You can clear just about every encounter this way, and on higher difficulties, you'll pretty much need to. Which brings me to my main issue. The combat is kind of one note. Leaping from group to group and carving through them in seconds is a great power trip. But once you've mastered the basics, there's just not much depth left to chase. After spending a lot of time with Darktide recently, I cannot help but feel like Daimon Blades lacks that extra layer of nuance, the various little tricks you can use to swing a fight in your favor. Which really is a shame because I genuinely like what Daimon Blades is trying to do. It just feels very rough right now. Unfortunately, I do have to pile in a bit more bad news because there is a fair bit of jank sprinkled throughout. Things just don't feel 100% there yet. The weapons, especially the really big ones, lack some much needed weight and impact. The grappling hook, because of course there's a grappling hook, is especially finicky. Getting a proper lock on is very inconsistent, which makes it supremely awkward to use in the middle of a fight, which happens to be exactly when you really need it. Thankfully, the devs do seem to be open to feedback. The grappling hook used to require you to stand perfectly still in order to get anywhere, but after an update, you can now use it even while double jumping all over the place. So with a bit of luck, these problems will be sorted out in the near future. As for right now, while Daimon Blades isn't a Souls-like, it does borrow one of the genre's best features, and that is parrying. Not only that, but you can parry both melee and ranged enemies. Parrying projectiles is especially satisfying since they bounce right back into the enemy's face and make them explode. And since the timing is generous enough that you can actually do it mid-fight, it is a very fun and very potent tool. On the other hand, trying to parry melee enemies is a very easy and very fast way to get turned into soup. Some attacks have bizarre delays while others come out instantly, making reactive play against melee opponents almost impossible. Loose hitboxes don't help either, because several times I died without even seeing what hit me, which honestly just never feels good. Where Daimon Blades really sets itself apart from the Souls games is with its actually functional co-op system. You can team up with up to 3 other players and carve through demons together like one big happy unhinged family. And there will be a lot of demons to chop as the enemy count skyrockets when you're in a group. Which honestly really is great, because mowing down a horde is far more exciting than gently massaging a damage sponge with a huge greatsword. Balance does need a bit of work though. Most enemies do feel fair, but a few of them really do hit absurdly hard given how much they can zip around. It is pretty demoralizing to spend an hour on a great run only to get spawn camped in the final room by enemies you can barely even see, let alone do anything about. Between levels, your team will get to decide which regions to visit, which mostly just changes the scenery and mission variety. Then, every few levels, you'll do a Mortal Kombat style stare down with the Hermit, the big bad pulling all of the strings. He picks a permanent debuff to slap onto your squad, but sometimes it does fail because, and I paraphrase, your team is perverted enough. Once he's done, you can then counter with a massive team-wide buff of your own. It is a pretty clever risk-reward sort of system, but right now it does need a bit more variety as honestly, everyone just seems to stack damage and call it a day. Much like everything else, multiplayer has a fair share of jank, mainly the netcode. Even when I'm hosting, allies tend to teleport around mid-fight, making any sort of coordination almost impossible. Hopefully the devs can tighten that up soon so we can all focus on what truly matters in life: opening treasure chests. Since Daimon Blades is a roguelite, there is plenty of different loot to chase. New weapons, rings, and currency you can use to power yourself up in between missions, along with a wide assortment of upgrades that last for the duration of the run. It might sound very complex, but really there's not much to it. Most upgrades you can find mid-mission just boil down to bigger numbers. More damage, more health, more loot, etc. Because of this, I rarely had to think about what to pick. The best choice was almost always immediately obvious. The permanent upgrades follow the exact same formula. They just make you slightly better, which, it is nice, but it's hardly exciting. When Daimon Blades gets creative though, things do get much more exciting. The alchemy/magic system is a great example of this. There aren't many spells to be found just yet, but the ones that do exist can completely change how you fight. My favorite is the Whirlwind spell, as it scoops up enemies, tosses them around, and then drops them all nice and neat in front of you in head-chopping formation. I just wish that magic wasn't so buggy. For most of my runs, spells would break after a level or two and then never work again. I tried literally everything to fix this, but nope, no luck. It honestly feels like a roll of the dice. Maybe it'll work and you'll have a blast, or maybe it'll just become a shiny new sticker on your UI. But do you know what's even cooler than a sticker? Well, pretty much everything, including Daimon Blades World. It has that Warhammer 40k vibe where everything looks like it was built for giants, but it's also bizarre and alien that you cannot even guess what any of this is supposed to be. And honestly, it is exactly that mystery that makes it impossible to look away. For example, there is a region that looks like hell. It is a literal hellscape made out of lava, endlessly trashing souls literally fused into the walls, and the soundscape is made entirely out of fire and scraping metal. It is clearly an awful, awful place, but what is it? Why does it exist? Is it actual hell? Or better yet, are we even on Earth? If you're looking for answers, I've got nothing. And the characters aren't much help either. Most of them are zealots on a holy crusade to defeat the Hermit, because he's clearly the bad guy, right? The few characters that do know what's going on speak in cryptic riddles that somehow make things even less clear. My absolute favorite moment in the entire game is when an evil door, and yes, an actual door, starts talking to you in a language you do not understand. It then realizes that you're confused, apologizes for mistaking you with someone else, then switches to another language that you cannot understand, and just keeps going. It is complete insanity, but honestly, it works. I am more curious about Daimon Blades' world than any other game I've played this year. It is strange, it is stylish, it is incomprehensible, but it is utterly unique. And speaking of doors, that's one of the free bosses you'll face in the current version. The first one acts as a sort of an introduction, so it's fairly simple. But the door and the hermit are where the real fun begins. They are lengthy, multi-phase fights with loads of different attacks, and honestly, I love both of them. They're the type of bosses that will obliterate you if you're just mashing buttons. But if you pay attention and learn their patterns, you can get through the entire fight without taking even a single hit. I especially love how you can parry their projectiles. So when the hermit unleashes his gigantic wave of death and destruction, you can just yell "get good" and then parry it right back at him. It is great. These bosses are also a great example of how Daimon Blades' combat system can be used for something much more intricate. And I can only hope that future updates will expand this sort of design across the rest of the game. Given how many special effects these bosses tend to spew out, I was pleasantly surprised to see Daimon Blades run smoothly, even on my fairly old PC. Throughout my journey, I never had any serious FPS drops, and I only ever crashed once. So performance-wise, it is in surprisingly good shape. Well, aside from the multiplayer netcode being a bit wobbly. So, is Daimon Blades worth playing this early? That, in all honesty, depends on your tolerance for jank. Personally, I really like what it's doing, and I had a great time with it over the past week. But it only just launched into early access, so it is very rough around the edges. But if you're okay with that kind of roughness, you can get a solid 15 to 20 hours of fun before it starts to feel repetitive. But if you want something that is really polished and something that you can really sink your teeth into, I would recommend waiting a few months and letting the devs smooth things out. The foundation really is solid, it's just that the game needs a bit more time in the oven. Thank you for watching, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye!